That's probably the most gratifying about being a business owner and being as large as we are is, through the process of building it and knowing the struggles that my own family went through during those times and the times before where I was, maybe not making a great buck, but learning something, to see a family be able to buy a house, put food on their table, and I ultimately had something to do with that. I think that's my proudest moment.
Pop culture has become obsessed with entrepreneurship stories from Silicon Valley and big startup. But the backbone of our economy is made of small, local businesses. Every day, millions of small business owners deliver quality products and services, support the local economy, employ their neighbors, and follow their passion. We think their stories are worth telling. I'm Angela Jovanet. Welcome to the Extraordinary Small Business Podcast. Martin Hoeger spent his 20s as a touring professional musician, later finding his way into small business ownership. Martin found a way to open a restaurant and bar in a time when money was tight and babies were on the way. How have Martin and his partners succeeded in an industry with such a huge failure rate? That's this week on Extraordinary Small Business. It's lunch hour in the bustling restaurant. Once a train station, Steam Pub is an impressive space with the ability to serve hundreds of people each evening. Though it's large, its narrow construction allows for a surprisingly intimate environment. I make my way to the corner of the restaurant where Martin and I sit atop a stage, microphones in hand. We covered a wide range of topics, from how he got into the restaurant business, how he found the money to open such a large restaurant when the banks laughed him out of the place, how he kept employees since his opening, and how he continues to grow. We're sitting here in Steam Pub, your baby, your restaurant, your pub, Pub Revolution.
Some may call it my baby, yes.
And how long have you been the owner of Steam Pub?
So we opened doors July 2012. So business has been open for just over 6 years, but we've been in business for about 7 years now.
Amazing. And before you opened Steam Pub, you were in the world of food and drink, right?
Yeah. So it's really been the only job I've ever held. I actually started, my first job ever was washing dishes about 500 yards down the road, and I was 14, and the liquor license I own now was from that place.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's pretty neat. And then, I was a professional musician for 25 years, so that always puts you into the restaurant business, because when you come, off the road or out of the studio, you need to make a buck. You're bartending, you're waiting tables.
Sure.
So yeah, I've been kind of all around this business.
Sure. So everything from dishwashing up to bartending.
Yeah. Started bartending probably about 22 years ago, right down the street, a place called Kenny's, a little bar. And then I went into the city. I was bartending at clubs, a nightclub called The Five Spot, for about 9 years. I was doing some fine dining. I kind of got the grand scope of it all, like every aspect I could. And then I started managing after that once my daughter was born.
Okay. So you started managing, and then at some point you thought, I want to be the owner. Take me through that thought process. What made you think, I want to do this for myself?
I was a bartender at the time. We had, I really wasn't planning on having a kid, but me and my now wife had gotten pregnant, and the place I was working at closed. They were closing for renovations. And Jerry Walsh from Big Heads, which is a sports pub chain in the area, came to me and offered me a job to manage one of his spots. Great opportunity as a young man to learn the business, but I didn't really see that as what I was going to become. So I denied him 3 times. And the third time he came back to me and I said, all right, listen, if I'm going to take this job, I want you to teach me everything about the business, because I'm not just going to be a manager of some sports pub. I'm going to own my own bar one day, and I want you to teach me what you know. And he agreed to it, and I was like, okay. So we started working together. And he was really good to me because I had a lot of different ideas than he did. And through a little bit of trial and error, he started accepting my ideas and allowed me to grow within his business and, kind of really get my feet under me and understand what I was capable of.
Now, when you denied him all of those times, is it because you didn't see yourself making a move in the food and drink industry, or it was because you wanted to go out on your own and you just didn't want to work for anybody else?
Honestly, I was afraid of kind of falling into that because, when you're a bartender, you're a server, you're making there's a lot of cash going around. Yeah. And there's a lot of freedom. And I was kind of forced with a life decision of, just being a brand new father, still being in my, late 20s. And I didn't want to, looking at his business model, I didn't want to become one of those dudes that was just
a lifelong manager
of a sports bar.
Right.
Yeah.
Because so you
Not
knew
that there's anything wrong with that, but yeah.
But you knew you wanted to be an owner, and so you were afraid that if you became a manager that it would just be too easy to stay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But you took the opportunity and you turned it into something for yourself, a learning opportunity, which is quite smart because, to learn from someone with multiple locations, you get to learn on someone else's dime, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I made all my mistakes on his wallet, as they say, which is nice to do and have the freedom to do, and for him to have the, faith in me enough to make those decisions. And, sometimes there were failures, sometimes there were successes, but he was always just like, all right, let's.
And you were honest with him from the beginning. I want to own a restaurant, so I'm using this as a learning experience, and he knew it.
Yeah. And he kind of moved me around the company as well, through that whole thing. I started managing one of the pubs, and then about 2 years into that, I became kind of his entertainment and marketing guy for the whole company, and then kind of moved into a GM role of the whole company. And then I was kind of his, I don't want to see, I was like his stopgap. So when a certain location wasn't doing so well, he would throw me in it. Yeah, he would throw me in there. I would, fire, hire, rebuild. 6-8 months later, I would put a manager in place and kind of roll on to the next one.
Had you not had that experience, do you think opening this restaurant would have been a completely different thing?
Yeah. Even having that experience, opening Steam was something that I didn't really realize I was getting into. Even having my hand held through the back end of the business and knowing it, still ownership when you're flying on your own and no safety net there's a lot more to, and to that fact, what we opened was a lot more than what I was used to as well. Like Steam itself is more than I had a kind of my hands on. The sports pub to a full run restaurant with 70
So your
employees.
original idea was to just open a bar, and then it sort of
kind of get away from me.
Okay. So let's talk about that. So how long were you a manager before you took the leap to become an owner?
So I was probably working for him for about 8-9 years, I guess.
Okay.
In one facet or another. And I would probably say the last year and a half was really when I was just kind of feeling...
You had learned everything you needed to learn.
Kind of stuck in a,
You wanted a challenge.
Yep. Yeah. It was kind of boring me anymore. And we actually, when I finally came to him and gave him my business plan, he was like, oh, this is great. I never begrudge you for, trying to better your family, blah, blah, blah. And 2 weeks later, he fired me.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So he knew it in the back of his head, but maybe he thought you would never actually call it.
He's a bit of a proud guy. So I think it was, and I don't think it helped that I was opening it within a couple miles.
I was going to mention we are right down the street from one of his establishments. So I can imagine that it's a little difficult. There was
a time there where we were, kind of falling out, but we've since come back to be really good friends.
That's great. That's great. So you learned a lot. You decided it was time to start something new. Starting a restaurant and bar, that's no small feat compared to some people who start businesses where maybe if it's a service-based business, you don't even need an office. You just need basically a laptop and an internet connection
And an idea.
and an idea. A restaurant, I mean, liquor license, the amount of overhead, building, insurance, it's astronomical.
Yeah.
How do you even begin to go there? Were you, knowing you were for a decade going to open a restaurant, were you getting ready financially? Personally, no.
No, not at all.
So how did you make that happen? I mean, that's a real challenge.
So as the story goes, it was, kind of decided, honestly, I probably shouldn't say this out loud, but there was a time when I was on the road. I came off the road and I was hanging out with some friends, and there may have been some hallucinogenics involved in a
Perhaps.
certain night.
Okay.
And there was, a kind of a moment of clarity in that moment that I kind of came out of it with this new vigor for what I wanted to do, and kind of really saw it clearly what, I wanted to open a restaurant. I wanted it to be, full service. I wanted different clientele. I wanted people. I didn't want to sit there and watch a guy drink a Budweiser all night long and slowly die on the bar stool. I wanted, people come in and have a couple drinks and have some food and go home and wake up for their job the next day. And, there's a lot of sadness in the bar industry that alcohol can be depressing. So
sure.
I wanted something that was a little,
departure from
a departure from that. And so I came out of that experience. I was like, I just had this zest for it. I was like, all right, let's do this. I called up my buddy, Mike Breslin, who has been an amazing chef in the area for years. And I was like, yo, you want to do this? And he was like, yeah. He's like, I was just going to call you. And I'm like, really? He's like, yeah, I already started business plan.
Wow.
So we were like, okay. So we sat down and just kind of started putting it on paper. And
so you've got the front of the house, you've got the back of the house, guy.
Yeah.
You're starting the business plan.
We're starting the business plan. We're getting this idea going. He had the chance of some money coming to him. My father had worked very hard his whole life, so he had a little cushion that he was willing to give me. A lot, on either side. But that kind of goes to this story, was where when we finally decided to do it, got a lawyer, we incorporated, we found the building, which was a building in our hometown that we both grew up in. And I always loved this building. I always thought it was very cool and unique as a kid, riding my bike by it. And I always thought it was underutilized. So it was a hair salon before.
And this is a huge space. How many square feet?
The open floor plan of the restaurant's 4,500 square feet. And then we possess another 2,000 square feet, kitchen, prep area, offices, all that stuff. So and we're about to take over more. We're about to take over another 1,000 square feet.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah. So I was sitting in the light with my wife and kids in the car, and I looked to my left. The building was vacant and it had a for lease sign in it, and it just hit me. It was like instantaneous, like somebody threw a bucket of water on me. Yeah, I said, that's it. She said, what? I said, that's my pub. She's like, yeah? I was like, yeah.
Was it for sale?
It was for lease, yeah.
For lease, okay.
And God bless her, because we had 2 young kids at the time.
I was going to ask.
Yeah. I probably skipped over that a little bit. She couldn't be more supportive. I came to her. I said, listen, this is what I'm thinking of doing. I'm probably going to end up getting fired if it gets out that this is what I'm doing. And Jerry finds out, and she was like, I got you. I'll work my butt off to make sure that bills are paid and food, and she did. And it was a big stress, but that's kind of how we roll, me and her. It's like, when times get tough, that's when we're our best.
Stick together.
Yeah.
It's amazing to have someone like that in your corner.
Yeah. So then we, fast forward again, we see the place. I pick, that's the pub, let's do it. We get a lease drawn up, and me and Mike go to the lawyer's office and we sign a lease. We have about $70,000 between the two of us. And we sign a $400,000 lease.
And that's just the lease before the liquor license and everything else.
Before anything, just to be able to be in the building.
So how do you do that? Do you go to a bank? Do you find more partners?
So We signed the lease. We're driving away from my lawyer's office. And
they let you sign the lease.
Yeah. Yeah. And I pull up to a red light and open my door and just vomit all over the place. I was like, what did we just do? I had no idea. But that kind of operating without a net at that point was like
your motivation.
Yeah, that's the best feeling in the world because it
has to work.
There was no failure.
Yeah. You've got
it's
your
not an option.
father's money. You've got a huge lease. You have to succeed.
Yes. Yeah. I would jokingly say, in quotations, jokingly say, if this doesn't work, my kids are going to be living in Costa Rica, on a beach somewhere. But there was some truth to that as well, because as time went on, the more and more money we borrowed, the more and more that if it was a failure, I obviously wasn't going to be able to pay it back.
Right.
And it would have ruined my life. There was no coming back from it. But like I said, that was kind of the excitement of what drove me
to work hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you were able to find banks to back you?
No banks. There was an issue with, so as we went around and kind of went in for loans, laughed at was probably the best way to describe. So probably the worst part of the economy, the worst time in the economy, 2011, the country was just kind of starting to claw its way back.
Right.
Government was just putting in regulations to banks that they had to loan money to kind of kickstart the economy. So we felt like we had a good position. A couple local kids been in the business for as long as we had been. Thought we knew what we were doing. Going to the banks, and they would literally laugh at us. So we obviously figured that, okay, conventional loans are not the way we're going to do it. So we took on some partners. A couple guys that we had worked with in the past. Gene, I had worked with at Big Heads, and Paul Kushner, Tubby, he had worked with Mike at Kenny's, and me and him had been friends, through the business for a couple years there. So we brought those guys in and basically just kind of piecemealed together the money. My buddy Arch tells a story of during this time where we were driving in the car together, and I was on the phone with an electrical contractor. And he's like, we were driving down the street, and you're talking on the phone, and you go, yeah, 250? Yeah, just, yep, got to get it done. Just do it. And he's like, you hung up the phone, and Arch turns to me and goes, that wasn't $250 you were talking about, right? I'm like, no, that was $250,000. He's like, you don't have $250,000. I'm like, I know.
You got to do it.
Yeah. Needs to be done. Let's do it.
So a lot of financial stress in the early days, obviously, so
Crazy.
that you could pay people back, pay your contractors.
Yeah. We kind of GC'd the whole project ourselves. And again, we were, retrofitting a complete building.
Right. Which was a hair salon.
So
into a restaurant. So you needed commercial kitchens and everything.
Plumbing, electrical, the
draft
whole
lines.
Yeah. Rip it down to this stuff.
You don't have 2 beers on draft here.
Yeah, no. No, why would we do something that simple? We 21. So
right.
Yeah, so a lot of the work was, 98% of the demo was, me, my friends. I had a lot of friends just willing to come in and help out. It helps when you're destroying something too with my friends. Like, dude, I'll give you a couple beers and a sledgehammer. Like,
right.
Let's go to town.
Right. So how long before you opened?
So we had scheduled a 3-month build out, which turned into a year. That's another part of it. You're paying. Our landlords were good enough to give us a 3 months grace period to fit out, but after that we were paying
rent
with no money coming in.
Right.
That was
hard time.
Yeah, it was difficult to get through. I was working here in the construction area. I was working 12 hours a day, and then going and bartending at night, and then coming home sleeping for like 2-3 hours, and then right back at it.
Right. Because you have to have the cash flow.
Yeah.
It won't work.
Yeah. And the kids got to eat.
Right. Right. Bills have to pay. Can't lose the house.
Yeah.
All of that stuff.
Yeah.
So you launch.
Yeah, so we, coming up the opening day, and we get it all done, and we're ready to open. And we had a really good Facebook presence at that point. We kind of brought people along through the whole process. We ran a Kickstarter for some of the finish work, some of the artwork, some of the paint, and the community really jumped into it. They knew us.
Right, you grew up here, you said.
Yeah, so there's still stuff on the menu named after people because of that original Kickstarter.
Oh, wow. That's interesting. So you use the Kickstarter saying if you donate X number of dollars, you'll get a menu item.
Yeah.
Okay,
So,
that's cool.
Like the Pickford panini, Mo Beans hummus. There's still to this day stuff on the menu that's named after
That's
people.
really cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
And so we opened doors, and our first night, so our soft opening, I'm in a 3-piece suit running around the restaurant, and one of the servers comes up and goes, Martin, chef needs to see you in the kitchen. I go, okay. And we had a point of sale system put in place.
Right. And
it wasn't communicating with the kitchen at all.
So the waiter or waitress would put in an order in the front, and it wasn't making it to the kitchen.
Not at all. So on the fly, all right, we got to handwrite everything.
Right.
People don't write anymore.
No. No.
So the
No
chicken scratch that was coming back to the kitchen,
right?
Trying to read it on the line when you got 200 people sitting for dinner. So it was a pretty big failure that first night. 45-minute ticket times, but people were good about it. They, hey.
People seem. I mean, most restaurants do soft openings for these exact reasons, right? Most people understand that the first time you come, you are working out the kinks.
Yeah.
So people are pretty gracious about it.
Yeah, and it's friends and family mostly.
Right.
And so we quickly understood that our point of sale system's not working. So we got to open doors because we got to pay bills. We're kind of literally the last $10,000 that we had to borrow to buy liquor to put in the building.
Right.
Because we had nothing left after construction and everything. So we had to open. So we opened that Tuesday to, I would say, probably 400 people in this building, which was this kind of whirlwind of like, holy shit, like this is like, people like it. People love it.
People want our food. They like our atmosphere.
Yeah. And people are having fun, they're loving the food, like all the systematic things that needed to happen to make it smoother still needed to happen, but people were enjoying themselves.
What do you think it was that people were enjoying? Was it, we're sitting here in a fairly populated area. You're not the only restaurant for miles. So it's not like there was no competition. What is it that you think people were particularly excited about?
I think the process of bringing people along via social media through the whole process really kind of ramped up everybody's excitement for what it was to be, what it was to become.
So it wasn't just a restaurant to them. It was locals, young locals, family guys who were trying to make it and be business owners in the community.
Yeah. And they were emotionally invested as well because, it was, 2011. Now we're sitting in 2018. So social media is a little different animal now than it was. I had, just from being in the music business, I had a really good understanding for social media through that I brought into my bar life. So when we dove into that and people kind of were following along, they saw the building taking shape. They saw us working, sweating, people would stop by during the process. Oh, the bar's in, and the excitement just kind of grew to this feverish pitch that literally we opened doors and people were lined up outside.
That's great. So the question is, did the excitement stick around post-launch?
Yeah, we're very lucky that they did and that people enjoyed it, and we kind of weathered the storm of the initial problems that we were going to have. And the only way you can kind of get through that is just try to be apologetic and try to figure out as quickly as possible how to fix the problem. I bought a lot of tables, dinners those first couple months.
Serve first, make them customers forever.
Yeah, make sure they walk out of the building happy. As much as you screw up during service or whatever happens with that table, just make sure that when they go out the door that they feel good about the experience they had.
Right.
And that's all you can really do in the service industry is
Sure.
just, try to convey that. And
Now, you must have a fairly large staff for such a large
yeah,
location.
so we're probably about 70 employees at this point.
Okay. Now, tell me about that. Tell me about, do you have people that are with you from the beginning?
Yeah. Yeah,
Wow.
most definitely. So that's probably the most gratifying about being a business owner and being as large as we are is, through the process of building it and knowing the struggles that my own family went through during those times and the times before where I was, maybe not making a great buck, but learning something, to see a family be able to buy a house, put food on their table, and I ultimately had something to do with that, I think that's my proudest moment when mothers work for me and fathers work for me and it's this is their income. This is this is how they support their families.
Yeah.
And to watch some of our employees grow from young people into being married and starting a family. And that gives me great pride to know that I'm able to do that for people.
It's a great responsibility, but it's what makes it all worth it.
Yeah. Yeah.
The restaurant industry usually has more of a high turnover employment rate.
Yes.
What keeps people here?
So the restaurant industry normally has a big turnover rate. So there's the 80-20 rule. So the 80-20 rule in the restaurant business is twofold. So with a customer, 80% of your customers are returning customers, 20% are new.
80% are returning customers.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
On the employee side, it's flip-flop. So 20% of your employees are your day in and day outs, and the 80% are rollovers. We're lucky enough that we kind of flip those numbers. I think I know how, but I'm not really quite sure. But we have staff that's been with us since day one. One of the reasons I think is that the four owners and then three owners now, we all were in the business so long as employees and as bartenders and as services cooks that we still understand what it means to be that.
Sure. You can identify and you've walked where they walk.
Yeah, and we're still young enough that I'm not afraid to get on my hands and knees and scrub a floor drain out, or I'm a show me by doing kind of guy.
Lead by example.
Yeah, exactly. And then the second part of it is I think we try to, that same idea in mind that we were once in that position, we offer healthcare. We try to keep our employees. We understand that we have good employees, and you've got to treat good employees good to keep them. So we offer healthcare. We try to.
And did you do that from the beginning?
Financially, we weren't able to from the beginning,
as soon as you could.
Probably about 3 years in, I guess we started that. And that's really expensive. From the outside as a business owner, you probably shouldn't incur if you don't have to, but we wanted to. And it's still a bit of a debate at owners' meetings, but we believe that it's the right thing to do.
It's the right thing to do, and certainly probably cuts down on the cost of turnover.
Right.
The amount it would cost to retrain and hire people, find qualified people and everything. I'd imagine if it doesn't balance out, it's close, but it is good to think about first what is the right thing to do.
Yeah.
So I imagine that queasy feeling in your stomach did not leave right away.
No.
How long?
I think it's still there.
I can imagine. How long before you started to feel at least a little comfortable with, okay, we're going to be able to stick it out, at least for the foreseeable future?
Well, very early on, there was a Hurricane Sandy came through.
Oh.
So we were open about 3 months. That was, I believe, October of 2012 that she came through, or late August or late September, whatever it was. And, we're a young company. We're, robbing Peter, pay Paul. You're just kind of floating checks. You're hoping people don't call you on it. They hoping they don't bounce. The one thing you can't do is bounce a check for liquor or beer. The LCB will pull your license. So Sandy comes along and knocks out power for 3 days to the restaurant. We threw out probably $15,000-$20,000 worth of food.
Ugh.
Almost buried us. And if we weren't as busy volume wise, it would have buried us.
People came out after the hurricane and it started to make up for it.
Yeah. So to answer your question, as far as like when did that feeling go away? So
you're getting there right before Sandy?
no, not necessarily.
Really?
There's a rule of thumb again in the restaurant business is with new restaurants.
Sure.
About 75% of them fail in the first year. Of that 25%, 50% of those fail within the first 3 years. And then of that other 50%, 25% of them make it 5 years. So when you reach the 1 year mark, you kind of go, all right, we're here. We
did the first hurdle.
We made it to this
we have
point.
to make it to 3.
Let's tighten up things, and you're looking at food costs, you're looking at liquor costs, you're looking at labor costs, your controllables, your prime cost things, your cost of goods, trying to pull it in, and when you're new, you're just kind of flying by the seat of your pants. We need roast beef. Order a couple slabs of roast beef. Maybe need one. Money's kind of flowing out, and you hope it flows back in. Year 3 comes, and once you kind of reach that 3rd year, you got a good understanding of what you're doing. You're kind of honing in all those things that
processes. You know exactly how much roast beef you need.
Yeah. And if you make it to that point, you go, okay. You look around and go, all right, I can kind of sleep at night now. 120 hours a week is not necessary.
Right.
Maybe
cut yourself a paycheck. Maybe.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Exactly. There was probably right around then. Year 2.5 is probably when we start paying each other. So that was probably when that queasy feeling started to dissipate.
Yeah.
And it still comes and goes, I guess. After 6 years. 5 years was when I felt like I could finally go on vacation for a week and my phone not be blowing up.
Right. There were people you trusted to run the ship for a week.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's been very comforting. And that goes back to having great employees and treating them well, is to be able to turn it off, for my wife's sake and my children's sake. There was times where I come home, my dad, my son, be like, who the hell is this guy? I'm like, I'm your dad. Hi, nice to see you.
Right.
So to kind of get back into their lives and it is, a very valuable thing to have.
Sure. I mean, and even now, no matter what you do, restaurant hours are not normal hours. So you have to design family life and family time around that.
Yeah. One thing is my kids sleep late, which is great. That's by design, I think. They're sleepers.
Yeah, I'll never forget going. I have friends who work in Major League Baseball, and we were at a game once down in Tampa, and my friend pointed down at the kids. It's 11 o'clock on a Saturday night, and these little kids are all running around. And she's like, "You see these kids?" She's like, "They sleep their father's hours so that they can see